If you've been keeping up with the news for Destiny 2, you would have known that there has been a weapons reveal for Lightfall, and this is just the exotics that are going to be coming out in Lightfall, not the actual legendary weapons, but what I wanted to do, instead of just covering them, I want to actually compare them to the Witch Queen's exotics and see if they're actually better or if they're worse. And the first one that I'm going to compare is the Deterministic Chaos, and that's a really difficult thing to say, I'm just going to admit. But this is effectively a Void Heavy Machine Gun, which is going to be able to do some very fucky stuff called Rhythmic Debuffs. And as it says in the trailer, the 4th shot will weaken enemies, and the 16th shot will actually make them volatile. But there is something else that you could add onto this as well, and that is things like this. So the Void Fragment, known as Echo of Instability, and what it basically does is when you defeat a target with a grenade, it will grant volatile rounds to your Void weapons. Now of course, stacking this on top with a heavy machine gun that is Void and makes them volatile anyway, you could have a lot of volatile rounds in the machine gun. Obviously, Bungie nerfed it from the Shattered Cypher kind of debacle that we've heard earlier in the season, but it will still be quite effective for this heavy machine gun. But now for the main reason why I picked the machine gun first, it's because it's quite easy to compare, because despite the fact that it's actually called a slug launcher according to the trailer, I am talking about Grand Overture. This is classified as a machine gun, and I will be able to compare the two from here. And what I'm basically going to be doing is comparing them on how effective I think they'll be, because to be honest, we've seen what Grand Overture was like at the start, and I'm hoping Lightfall isn't the same thing, but you never know. So first off, when Grand Overture actually came out, I'm not going to lie, I was a fan of it seeing it in the trailer, but I definitely felt like it fell very flat and the fire rate wasn't there. Obviously, they've changed it now because it's a lot better than what it used to be on release, but that was back then. Whereas the machine gun that's shown in the Lightfall trailer does actually look to be more effective and looks like it would be a lot more useful than Grand Overture was. And this is down to a lot of the weapon changes that we know is going to come in Season 20, like with the buffs and nerfs that are coming along. But having a strong heavy machine gun would be quite useful. I imagine it would be something that would use for quite a lot of Season 20. Season 21 will probably have some kind of defined meta at that point and we won't use it as much, but I could be wrong. But so far, I'm actually quite impressed with the new weapon, so I'm going to give a point to Lightfall because this actually looks like a cool gun. Next up on the list, we have the Winterbite Glaive, and I'm not going to lie, this actually looks like a pretty cool design. I bet whoever made this at Bungie was quite chuffed with themselves when they finished it. It is quite nice to see a different type of glaive, because we're kind of used to them being like one blade on the end, and that's it. This one just turns it into a trident, so I'm all for the unique design. And I really hope Bungie does actually carry on with this trend when it comes to making glaives, because they're quite fun to see. But as you've seen in the trailer, it is a stasis glaive, and I'm under the impression this will be a heavy glaive as well, so it does fall into the category of the other 3 glaives that came in Witch Queen. But I can pretty much guarantee this is an open shut case, because unlike the Witch Queen, where you had one separate glaive for each class, this one is going to probably be across all classes, which is just a massive benefit. But let's talk about the ability, which will basically freeze enemies with a frost orb that you can launch from the glaive, which again, I'm a very big fan of the utility for this, but we're going to have to compare it to the other utilities. So for Hunters, we had the Arc Shock, for the Titans, we had the Bubble, and for the Warlock, we had the Healing Turrets, which in their own right, yes, they are useful, but this one seems like it's going to be very good at suppressing larger groups of ads. Because Bungie seems to be developing a lot of areas lately that are quite tightly compact with loads of ads inside. So we're probably going to be looking for some kind of weapon to reduce that or delay them at least. So as you can imagine, I'm also going to give another point to Lightfall because again, Winterbite is it just seems very cool. Next up in the match is a bit of a bloodbath if I'm going to be honest. It's the Quicksilver Storm, and the only one that's really compatible with that in the Witch Queen would be the Osteo Striga, because they are both rapid fire guns. Albeit the Striga is an SMG and the Quicksilver is actually an auto rifle. But they do share one thing in common, they are the pre-order exotics for both DLCs, which makes sense to compare them in that sense. And whilst they do have very different types of firing rates, like I'm pretty sure that the Quicksilver has micro missiles, but the Osteo Striga does fire rounds that follow the enemy, and then not only that, its ability allows them to be poisoned. So talking about the abilities and comparing them, the Osteo Striga poison pool is absolutely lethal, and not to mention it spreads when enemies die, making it even more powerful. The Quicksilver Storm, however, did have its ability kind of locked until Lightfall, because the grenades actually create something called tangles on kills. You basically throw the tangle and it'll explode and cause damage to enemies. That's pretty much what it does. But in terms of ad clear and how effective these two weapons will be, the Osteo Striga still annihilates the Quicksilver Storm. I do hope that I'll be eating my words and the Quicksilver Storm turns out to be incredible when Lightfall drops, but I am not seeing it happen personally, so a point is going to Witch Queen. Now for the final weapon in Lightfall, we have Final Warning, which fires charged tracking rounds, which I'm not gonna lie, it looks really interesting and ties into the Strand. This will probably be one of the first weapons we get with the Strand element archetype. And the tracking rounds is a bit questionable to say the least, because I'm not sure how effective this gun is going to be if you can lock on with it. But as I'm sure you can appreciate, pairing this up against the Parasite is just not fair in the slightest, which is why I'm going to be using the Trespasser as a comparison, because it's an exotic pistol that came out with Season of the Haunted. It's technically within the Witch Queen, so I will allow it for this exception. So basically what you're going up against is the Final Warning, which is a lock-on sidearm, and then this sidearm, which is a rapid-fire sidearm. And I'm going to be blunt here, I think the Trespasser will actually be better, because I don't see the merit in having a sidearm that can lock on. That's pretty much going to be its only gimmick. There's got to be something extra for the sidearm for me to actually be using it actively. It's pretty much an argument of, if I have a bounty that requires me to use sidearms to complete, am I going to pick up the Trespasser or the Final Warning? And it's going to be Trespasser every time, because it's just that much more effective at dealing with that. Obviously, I could be wrong. I don't know the damage of Final Warning just yet, but if it's going to be able to lock on to targets, I imagine the damage isn't going to be that good. Just for now, I'm going to give the point to Witch Queen, because the Trespasser for me is just going to be a better pistol from what I've seen. And now I'm going to just tie this all into one at the end, which is the armor pieces. And the way I'm going to do this is there's 3 armor pieces in each one, so I'm going to decide which ones are better, and then the winner of that 3 gets the point for the overall rating. So starting with the Hunter's Exotic, we have the Facade. I'm not going to actually pronounce that first word because it would kill me trying. It's basically an exotic that reduces your flinch when you have actually used the grapple, which for PvP, it could be useful if you mostly use sniper rifles or anything with scopes that you need a lot of precision with. But outside of that, it doesn't seem like there's going to be much purpose in using this. Whereas if you look back into the Witch Queen, we had the Blight Ranger helmet, which basically increased the damage of any projectiles that you deflected when you were using the Arc Strider staff. I can't remember the exact multiplier for it, but it was enough for it to warrant to be used quite a bit. So the first point is going to go to the Witch Queen when it comes to exotic armor. Moving over to the Titan Exotics, we now have the Abiant Leap. I think I've said that right, I could be wrong there. And I'm not going to lie, I like the look of these because you can pop up a barricade and it will fire a shockwave of Strand out to your enemies, which it looks good. They do call them lashes, so it's another interesting term, and I don't know if that's going to be something that is actually used in Strand quite a lot, but we're going to have to wait and see if that's the case. But I like the fact that you can shoot shockwaves out to enemies by putting up a barricade. Whereas if you compare it to the Witch Queen's one with the Hoarfrost Siege chest, then not exactly as impressive. I did like the idea of having a cool stasis wall pop up, but 9 times out of 10, the barricade is actually better than the frost wall, especially due to the fact that you can actually pass through a barricade, whereas with the stasis wall, you can't. So a point is going to Lightfall because the Titan boots do look very good. Which means the Warlock Exotic is going to be the be-all and end-all, and it is called Swarmers, which is a really weird name for an exotic, but I'm not going to judge it too much. I'm more interested in its ability, which is if you destroy Tangles, which I'm assuming is the thing that is shot by the Titans to make the Cabal float in the air as well, you can spawn something called Threadlings. And the best way to describe it was how Axelar 1 described it. They are like mini shark going around in the ground. And not to mention, these look like these track down enemies and make them explode. So I'm all for this. It looks like it's going to be an interesting season for Warlocks as well. And then you compare it to the Witch Queen with Osmiomancy gloves, and that basically just grants you an additional Cold Snap grenade, albeit it does increase the Seeking with it. It's still just another Cold Snap grenade, so it's not exactly that effective, but I don't see much utility of it unless you are using it inside PvP, which then you're freezing Guardians, then it has a purpose. But generalized ad clear, it's not that good, whereas having Swarmers, which literally hunt down ads and will make them blow up, does seem very worth it to me. So another point is going to Lightfall for the Warlock Exotic, which does obviously mean that Lightfall wins 3-2. I'm not going to lie, I was a little bit concerned that Lightfall was going to fall flat a little bit, but looking over the exotic weapons properly and not actually taking too much time to focus on the negatives I'm concerned about, I can say overall I'm going to be looking forward to Lightfall when it comes out, but there are still a lot of questions up in the air about the weeks that are going to come, but we're not going to know any answers until the time comes. But if you like the video, remember to leave a like down below and let me know what exotic you're looking forward to the most in Lightfall. I would love to know. But goodbye for now.